Hi there, this is Nicole from Right at Home Shop, and today I'm sharing the final video of our National Craft Month celebration. Today I'll be sharing some gel press techniques using dies from our seasonal wreath die set. This die set had been out of stock for a little bit, but it's finally back today, and I'm excited to be sharing some more ideas of how to use it with you. I had demoed this die set at the Cardmaker Success Summit in February, so I'll put a link to that live stream in the description box below if you'd like to see more ideas with this item. Let's get started with today's cards. Okay, so here I have a gel press from Jelly Arts, a brayer, and some Catherine Pooler ink pads. And for this first background, I'll be showing you how to create a fun masked effect using the wreath die from the set. I realized I didn't film a clip showing what the actual dies look like, so I'll insert a picture to the side here. If you haven't used a gel plate before, it's typically used in mixed media as a mono printing plate. Then you can add different mediums on, like acrylic paints or dye inks, and then transfer that color to a piece of paper. I've seen a lot of card makers use a jelly plate for card making lately, so I decided to give it a try for myself and share what I was able to come up with. So the ink colors I'm using are from Catherine Pooler, and they're in the colors Melon Ice, Lime Ricky, and Aquatini, as I wanted to create a green, springy background. So I'm just rolling the brayer onto the ink pad, and then rolling it onto the jelly plate to transfer that ink. For this first layer, I'm only using the 2 greens. You'll see that when you roll on that color, it's actually very light. Even in real life, it's very hard to see, but it is there, and once we put the paper on top and transfer it, you'll be able to see the color. Then once I have the plate completely covered in ink, I'll place down one of the wreath die cuts on top, and then cover it with a piece of white cardstock. You can use your hand to rub over the back of the paper to transfer that color, but I personally like to use the brayer, so I rolled off any of the excess ink that was on it onto a scrap piece of paper on the side here. So I just rolled the brayer onto the back of the paper and lifted it off the plate, and you can see we have the negative of where that die cut was on our background. I was so excited when I did this as I wasn't sure how well the ink would actually transfer in those intricate parts of the die cut, but I think because the jelly plate is a pretty sticky surface, the paper was able to grip to it, and those tiny areas were able to actually transfer to the paper. You can also lift up the die cut off the plate, and you can see it will have transferred the color as well. So from this one process, we were able to get 2 pieces that we can use for cards. I decided I wanted this background to be a little bit darker, so I'm going to do a second transfer. I'm going in with the darker green and blue inks and adding those onto the surface. Once I blended those, I actually rolled off the excess ink onto parts of the wreath die cut over on the side there so that it had some variation in color as well. Then I'm going in with the full sheet and lifting up that color, and you can see that it's getting a little bit darker, and the negative of the wreath is a little more subtle now. I'm going to go in for a third layer of color, and this time I'm going to experiment with using the ink pads directly onto the surface of the jelly plate. This helps transfer a lot more ink, so the results will be darker than when we were just using the brayer. I used all 3 colors this time, and then blended them together using the brayer, rolling off any excess. I decided to add another die cut on top, and then pressed my paper on top of that. And here's the final result that I was super happy with. You can see we got much more color by inking up the gel plate directly with the ink pads, and there's almost like a ghost print of the first wreath that we did in the leaves of the second wreath die cut. And here's what the die cut ended up looking like. I did roll on some more color just to kind of blend it a bit better, but other than that, we have 2 pieces that are ready for cards. For my next background, I'm going in with more of a warmer color scheme, so I'm starting off here using It's a Girl and Tiara from Catherine Pooler. I did just want to note that I wiped off the gel press after the last background using just a stamp chamois and some water. So I'm rolling all of those colors on and blending them in between so that we have a nice ombre of color. And then on top, I'm adding a ton of flower die cuts and just scattering them in kind of a diagonal pattern across the plate, and then adding my paper on top. And when you lift off, you can see this awesome background that we get with those negative spaces. And of course, now we have all those color die cuts as well. After doing the first print, I noticed that there was still some ink on the plate, kind of in the shape of the flower die cuts, so I decided to pick it up on my scrap sheet of paper, and I got this fun background that I can use on a future card. So just like on the green background, I didn't want the negative white flower spaces to be such a stark contrast with the background, so I'm going to quickly do another layer of color. I wanted to add more ink to my flower die cuts, so I decided to use the same technique that I did with the wreath before, where I ink up the gel plate with ink and roll off any excess onto the die cuts. This is a great way to get another background done and to make sure that you're not wasting any of your ink. Here's a look at all of the finished pieces. I have even more that I didn't show here, but I recommend just experimenting and trying different mediums and techniques to try and create fun backgrounds. Okay, so let's make some cards. For the green background here, I decided to use it for a 5x7 card so that I could preserve as much of it as possible. The finished piece here is cut to just under 5x7 so that there's a slight border once it's adhered to a card front. To decorate the wreath, I'm pulling in the flowers we used as a mask on the pink background and adding some dimension to them by using this stylus tool and foam mat. I find that when I use the stylus to burnish the center of the flowers, the petals naturally start to curve upward and don't create any creases that sometimes happens when I just bend the petals manually. For the sentiment, I'm using the thank you die from our script greetings die set and stacking 3 of them on top of each other so that it has some dimension. Again, I felt that the white was a little stark against the green background, so I'm using a yellow ink and lightly blending it onto the bottom of the words here. So the color will be just enough to make it blend into the background and coordinate with the other images without being too bright. Now I can glue all the flowers down around the wreath and add my sentiment to the right hand side. Then I glued the entire panel onto a 5x7 card base. Off camera, I added yellow gems to the center of all the flowers and scattered around the sentiment, and this first card was finished. I love the bright green paired with the pink flowers and the cool effect that we were able to achieve by using the wreath as a mask, plus all the fun texture and lines that comes from using a jelly plate. For the pink background, I die cut it using a stitched rectangle die, and I'm going to go in and add centers to all the flowers. To do that, I'm using our stencil paper, which is just like stencil material but a little thinner so that it can be used to create your own stencils with standalone die sets. I took the flower center from the die set and cut it directly from the stencil material so that now I can ink in all of the centers using a blending brush. What's great about this paper is that since it's just like stencil material, it is see-through, so I can perfectly line up those centers, and it's also durable enough that I can save it for future projects. I just store it in the same storage pocket with the die set. I just love the little detail that adds, and that we were able to keep the background completely flat. I'm using the hello from the same script greetings die set, but instead of blending, I actually die cut the top layer from one of my scrap sheets. I loved how the ink got a little darker from all the layers of ink, and I thought it added a nice pop against the background. I finished this card off by just popping up the panel onto an A2 sized card base. So here's the 2 cards that we completed today, and all of the leftover pieces that we have for future cards. Using a jelly plate for card making is such a fun process and gets you out of your comfort zone to try new techniques. Let me know down in the comments if you've tried gel printing for card making before and which of these cards was your favorite. If you've been following along with our National Craft Month celebration, I want to thank you for joining us, and if you missed any of the videos, head back to our channel for even more card making techniques. I'm going to try to keep posting videos consistently here, so stay tuned for more to come, and let me know if there's anything specific you want to see. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you back here soon. Bye!